that voice that was like, fuck, dude, like this is not good.
Welcome to The Bitch in My Brain, the personal growth podcast where we address negative self-talk, build confidence, own our self-worth, and have a good-ass time doing it. Hosted by me, Josie Woods, life coach, entrepreneur, and light chaser. Get ready to embrace self-love and start living in your light. Now let's get after it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Bitch in My Brain podcast. My name is Josie. It is a pleasure to be with you this week. We are having a little bit of a celebratory episode. I just a few days ago officially reached 2 years sober from drugs and alcohol. And it is probably one of the biggest accomplishments that I've had in my life thus far. And so I thought that I would take you guys kind of through my journey, there's the word again, trying to get sober and get my shit together is pretty much, really what pushed me to make that change in my life. And I will get into all of that. I'm going to take you from, the very beginning all the way to where I am today. So I'm very excited about this episode because this means a lot to me. Sobriety is probably one of the most important things in my life. And I wanted to, I've kind of held on to this episode for a little while. When I first started the podcast, I knew this was something that I wanted to talk about. However, I wanted to make sure before I shared that I was coming from a clean place, a clear place, because it's so important to me that I want to make sure the message that I share comes across in a way that resonates and inspires, as well as just kind of shows the good that can come out of it. And so, I finally felt that kind of pull to record this episode and share with you guys, what's going on or what went on and what's going on now. Really, actually, before we get started, just because I want to make sure that things are very clean and clear around sobriety, I am a firm believer in plant medicine. And so when I do refer to sobriety in this episode, I want to make sure that it's clear that I'm talking about drugs and alcohol. Plant medicine is still involved in my life. However, I do want to note, and this is something that is very important, I have a very conscious relationship with plant medicine. I am very aware of the usage occasions as well as my intent behind them. So although I still do engage in plant medicine, it is a completely different relationship than the relationship I have with drugs and alcohol. So I just wanted to make that clear. There's no confusion. And let's jump in. So as I've kind of said in previous episodes, I've kind of always been a party girl. And I think that started from early on in childhood. I had a little bit younger parents. And so they, were pretty young as we were growing up. And they were very social, very social. They had a very close, tight friend group, and they would play in a lot of beer leagues. And we never had a babysitter, me and my brother, nor did any of the rest of, the kids from my parents' group. We were always brought along. And so we would go to these beer league softball games, and then afterwards, everyone would go either to a house or to a restaurant. And at that time, the ones that weren't driving, those people would get pretty pretty sauced up. And it was so normal for us to be in that party environment. And I have these kind of distinct memories of being at these parties with my parents, and all the kids were kind of the same age. And so we would all be down in the basement, playing with Bratz dolls and trucks and all of that stuff. And then upstairs, our parents were all having a really good time. And so from a young age, I feel like I connected the dots between alcohol and having fun, because when we'd see our parents drinking, they were having a good time. They were laughing and joking and all the fun stuff. So as a little girl, that was very much a part of my life and experience and all of that. And really where I started to become curious about alcohol was probably around middle school. I would have like a sleepover with a friend, and if my parents were gone, sorry, Mom and Dad, we would sneak up on top of the fridge my parents had, and it was there for a long time. It was a raspberry bottle of Burnetts, which just makes me cringe because we're all familiar with Burnetts and and how terrible it is. But we would pour tiny, tiny little shots and chase them with Capri Suns, because we thought that, we thought we would get drunk off of it, which clearly didn't happen. But we were very curious and, wanted to, kind of explore. And so it was, kind of sneaky, but by no means were we doing it a lot. And it wasn't until high school that I really began to drink and party, because we hung out with the older crowd, and that crowd loved to party. Well, the class 2 years ahead of us loved to party. The year ahead of us, they were, for lack of a better word, kind of lame. They were a little lame, judgmental, all the things. But, we started partying every weekend, and it really became this kind of big piece of high school. The group of girls that we were in, we were definitely known as the party girls, and we enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun at that time, because you felt a little rebellious and you felt really cool and all the things that, yes, us teenagers feel around alcohol. But I was a very big partier, and that carried through high school. And I started to get in some trouble around drinking. And this was probably my junior year, which was when I was probably drinking, kind of partying the most, traditionally partying the most. And I put a lot of kind of value or weight on drinking. So there would be times where there would be a party happening, and the go-to is always saying, "Oh, I'm having a sleepover at so-and-so's house." And I was so thankful that my parents were not the kind of parents that were let me talk to their mom or whatever, because that would have ruined so many plans. But they would just say, "Okay, you can have a sleepover." But the times that they didn't, and they were like, "No, not tonight," I would just turn my phone off and say, "Okay, I'll deal with the consequences tomorrow morning." Because I wasn't going to leave the party. I'm like, I will risk getting in trouble so that I can, hang out with all of these people. So that happened pretty frequently. And then there was this one, this one trip my parents went on. It was a camping trip. And I told them that I had to work. And so they said, "Well, why don't you come up for a night or two And then on the day that you have to work, you can drive back down, go to work, whatever. And so I was going to have the house to myself. And I decided, obviously, to throw a party. And the party was a lot bigger than I intended, but I was my ego was kind of vibing it like, yeah, this is a bumpin' party. I'm so cool. And honestly, we kind of trashed my parents' house. I do feel bad looking back because my mom had this really cool sculpture and it ended up falling off the shelf and breaking. And in my drunk panic, I was like, you know what, just throw it away, throw the whole thing away. So I look back at that. I'm like, oh man, that hurts my heart because I think it was a pretty nice sculpture. But anyway, we have the party, and the next morning I wake up and my dad is calling and he's like, so I heard you had a party last night. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't. And he said, yeah, one of your brother's friends texted him and said, yo, your sister's throwing a party. Where are you at? And I was like, son of a bitch, because that's what I get for being friends with my brother's friends. So I was caught, and they got home. We had a conversation. They were sick of my shit. And so I got grounded for an entire month. And I also got my phone taken away. So they were like at their absolute wits' end with, yeah, all my bullshit. And so I went through that month of being grounded, but I was still lying to them, saying that I was going to work and I would really go and hang out with my friends. And while I had my phone taken away, I hooked up my iMessage to our little Mac at home. And so that's how I was communicating with everyone. Well, my brother, and this is one of the times he totally snitched on me. I still hold it over his head. But he was on the computer and pulled up my messages, saw that, and basically, yeah, ratted me out to my parents. So my parents tacked on another 2 weeks. So in total, I was grounded for 6 weeks. Well, the day that I got ungrounded, there was a huge concert going on at Red Rocks. And a bunch of people were going from different schools. There was like this excitement, all of the things. And I was fucking stoked because I'm like, yes, I'm not grounded anymore. Like, let's send it. So I clearly didn't, learn anything I didn't reflect during my time being grounded. But anyway, I'm like, let's fucking go. So we went to one of our friends beforehand, and that's how we were going to get up to Red Rocks. And I immediately start drinking. And I had a bottle of Jose Cuervo that was like duct taped to my hand. So I'm like getting after it right at the beginning before we even get to the lots. By the time we get to the lots, I'm starting to brown out. So I have very few kind of memories of this time. But the last thing that I remember is walking up and seeing one of my friends, Ian, who went to another school, and he had a bottle of Goldschlager, and he was like, you want to trade shot for shot? And I was like, oh, fuck yeah, let's do it. And so I remember taking it, and then everything goes black. And the next thing I remember is I wake up and everything is still black, but I hear voices around me, and I realize they're my parents. And then I realize that I'm in the hospital. And I guess what happened, because, I don't remember a damn thing. So this is from all the stories that I've pulled together from all the witnesses. But I was absolutely trashed, a lot of bit too drunk. So being that we were so young, a few people were like, oh, let's just put her in the car to chill out. Well, it was like 100 degrees that day. So I was very fortunate enough that I guess there were cops that were walking by, and saw me in the car and was like, holy shit, this girl is unconscious in a hot car. Like, we got to get her out. And so, yeah, they got me out. And next thing you know, I'm on a stretcher and headed off to the hospital. And I just want to say, this has been kind of what I was known for a while, because there were so many people there. And it, like I said, it's from different schools too. So it's like some people I had never known, and this is their first impression of me, is just being like drunk as fuck in a crop top and like my ass hanging out in a pair of jean shorts. Like, it was not, it was not a good look. But once I got back from the hospital the next morning, I woke up and I was just kind of like not spiraling as in like freaking out, but spiraling in a way of like, what's happening? What's going on? And so my dad, I go into my parents' room. My dad's laying on the bed and I just kind of lay down. He's like, okay, let's talk. Like, what's going on? Because, you're kind of going off the rails. And what I said was like, I don't know, Dad, I'm just trying to figure my shit out. And this is kind of a sidebar, but I think it's absolutely hilarious. And he's going to be a little bit embarrassed that I'm saying this, but he took from that conversation of me being like, I'm trying to figure myself out, that basically what happened is I had that conversation, and then like 2 days later, I'm in the car with my mom, and she's like, so your dad didn't want me to tell you this, but I feel like I have to, just to like, let you in. And she's like, based on the conversation that you had with your dad, he thinks that you might be lesbian, and that's okay. And I literally was like, hold on. Like, that, how did he go from me being drunk, I'm trying to figure myself out, to my daughter might be a lesbian? And I think, what might have fed into that is, for a while, I only dressed in sweats and soccer clothes and all of that. And I never brought a guy home or had a boyfriend. So I guess I can see how he made that connection. But it was funny because when I got home, my mom was like, don't tell him. And I walk right in the door. I'm like, okay, Dad, I just got to clear things up. Like, you are taking this in the completely wrong way. So we cleared that up, and now it's something we laugh about. But another thing that came up that morning that I was talking with my dad was, it really made me reevaluate who I was surrounding myself with. And that was kind of a catalyst moment of when I began to break off from the girl group that I had been a part of throughout high school. And conveniently, I had a good friend. He wasn't a friend at the time, but a good friend now, reach out and was like, hey, saw you yesterday. I hope you're doing okay. Like, are you alive? That sort of stuff. And he's like, well, if you want to redo, we're going to another concert this weekend at Red Rocks, and you should come with. So, of course, I'm like, hell yeah, I get a redo because I missed the first one. I might as well sneak in this next one. And there weren't a lot of people going. It was just like a very small group. And this is kind of when I began to explore drugs. And my brother, my brother kind of was already in that space. And so I kind of had a sense of like safety, because I'm like, oh, if he does it, then it's probably okay that I do it. Even though I've seen him get in trouble for it, it was like, it didn't feel as risky because I was like, he's doing it, I'm going to do it. Let's get after it. And so that's really when things began to kick off with drugs. And through our senior year of high school, we were going to shows pretty much every single weekend. And every single weekend, we were, doing a little extracurricular activities. And I think the reason why I really began to like drugs a lot were, for multiple reasons. But one is they kind of tickled my itch for rebellion, because a lot of people at that time really weren't doing drugs. Like it was still taboo, still really frowned upon. I know things have shifted a little bit in recent years, but yeah, I really got to be that kind of inner rebel that I liked. And I was also a fun chaser. So I quickly realized that drugs added this new element to partying. And when you're socializing and doing them, it, made things more fun, which, like I said, fun chaser, that is my mission. And then the other part of it as well is I thought that I was really, really fucking cool for doing them. And what built my ego even more was I was kind of everyone's hook. Like, I knew people who could get stuff. And so they would ask me and I'd be like, text whatever and be like, yeah, no, totally, I can get that. So it also like stroked my ego of being this like rebellious, cool girl that, isn't afraid of everything or anything. And so that kind of druggy attitude followed me because I made it very much a piece of my identity because I liked that part of me at the time. But I carried that, into college, and it was really my sophomore year that cocaine began to be my drug of choice. Prior to that, it was mostly, kind of party show drugs. So, it was Molly or acid or whatever. But now I've moved into really enjoying blow. And my sophomore year, it wasn't too bad. Same with kind of my junior year a little bit, but definitely I was doing it frequently. And then my senior year and the year following was really when the problems began. I was very much focused in on partying with that drug. And what I quickly realized was anytime I ingested alcohol, like even just one drink, my next thought was always, we should go get a bag. There was never a delay or like second thought of maybe not. It was like the moment that I had one drink in me, it's how can we make this more fun? And at that time, I thought blow made everything more fun. And so the problem is I knew a lot of people who sold. So it was really, really easy for me to come by, which is why it became such a casual thing. And I found that the people that hadn't done it before, that was more like, oh my gosh, how, than it was the people that have done it before. So it was a very, very casual, consistent relationship. And after college, that followed me for probably, I graduated 2018, so that would be another 5 years. And throughout that time, towards about the last 2 years before I decided to make a change, I really realized that it was becoming a problem. And I would call my dad almost every weekend, every other weekend, and share with him, I really want to stop doing this. Every time, time I drink, I end up doing it. I really want to stop. And he would, we'd talk about it in depth. And I was like, okay, I'm actually going to do it. I'm actually going to do it. And then I'd call him the next week and say, Dad, I fucked up. And it was just a continuous cycle. And I knew that it was starting to get out of control. And I don't think, I need to explore this more, that I was ever physically addicted to blow. Like I didn't need it to function, in my daily life. But because I was such a binger, that was my shot to do it and do a bunch of it. And so I went through that for about 2 years. And the entire time I was having this voice whisper in the back of my head, like, hey, this needs to be changed or this needs to shift. And I was just so resistant to it. I was like, I know, but then I would get in those situations and, I'd completely forget about everything. And I was only focused on how much fun can we have. And that ultimately led me to the kind of true catalyst that made me truly understand that I had no other choice but to get sober. And that was what kicked it off was the Avs parade. The hockey team, they won the Stanley Cup and they did a big parade in Denver. And it started early. So we got there at like 6:30 in the morning and we're starting to drink. And we did that all day long. Like I think I had a drink in my hand and was drinking the entire day. And we were all over the place. But we ended up at this bar for a few hours, taking shots, forcing people to take shots. I mean, I had my friends that were like, dear God, Josie, fucking chill. And I was like, no, we got to keep going. We got to keep going. And ultimately everyone was like, hey, I'm tapping out. We're going home. Like, I'm tired. And because I'm a fun chaser, I was like, wait, what do you mean? Like, we need to keep this party going. And Sam had left at that point. So it was just me and my 2 friends. And they were on the same wavelength as me of like, yeah, let's get after it. Let's go. And so we continue drinking and then we go back to my house. And I'm like, okay, like let's have a little bit more fun. Maybe we can take a little Xanax and chill out. So we all take a little Xanax, and pretty much right after we did that, it was like, well, you want to know what would be more fun? Would be if we go and get a bag of blow. And so we did, because I genuinely could not resist. Like the moment that seed was planted, it was like, there's only, one option, and that's going and getting it. So I don't really remember how we got there, but the guy that was selling it to us, he was at a concert at this like shitty little venue down in Denver. And we each paid like $15 to go in to basically exchange and walked right back out, came to the house. And for the next, however many hours, we were, snorting stuff. And it reached a point, the sun comes up, which is everyone's worst nightmare when they're in that state, because that's when the anxiety starts to come in. And I'm sitting on my couch, and one of my friends is passed out this way. One of my friends is passed out this way, and there's still one line left on the plate. And so I'm sitting in between them. And I was like, well, I can't let this go to waste. So I take this line. And it was probably 6:37 in the morning. And all of a sudden, I hear Sam walk down the stairs. And he turns the corner and we make eye contact. And he looked at me and was just like, the 2 words that came out of his mouth were, "Aw, Joes." And for some reason, those words hit me so hard, because it was the way he said it and the look in his eyes of just like he felt bad for me, because I had had so many conversations with him about how I wanted to stop. And every time, he'd be like, "Hey, I got you, I got you." And then I would go and, fuck it up. And so it was in that moment that I was like, okay, I can't keep doing this. This is actually insane. And it's also very dangerous because we mixed downers and uppers all night. And, my heart was like fucking going crazy. But the only way that I could come down and actually sleep would be to take another Xanax and smoke some weed. And so I ended up, I was just so reckless. And I remember being on the patio and just, that voice that was like, "Fuck, dude, like this is not good." And so I made a vow to myself on that day that I can't do drugs anymore. Like it's ruining my life. And so I decided that getting sober would be what I needed to do, because really alcohol is what's the slippery slope for me. I don't want to go do a line sober. Like that sounds like a really bad time, actually. But I knew that if I could cut out booze, then I was going to be good. And so I cut out booze for a couple of months, and then I got invited by my mom to this wine night, and one of my childhood friends and their mom were going. And I hadn't seen her in a while, so I was like, yes, that sounds like a fun time. So I told Sam, I was like, "I think I'm going to drink tonight, but I'm only going to do the tasting, and then I'm going to call you. You can pick me up. All will be well." Well, that's not how I operate, because my inner addict is, once I went to the wine tasting, I immediately started just getting after the wine and finishing every glass, like the whole shebang, because I was having a lot of fun with my childhood friend. And after the wine tasting, we were like, you know what, let's get pizza with everyone. So then we went and got pizza, and I had 2 vodka lemonades there. And then after the pizza, when everyone was going home, and Sam had joined at this point, it was like, well, let's go to one more bar. And so we went to another bar. I took some whack ass shot of whiskey. It was supposed to taste like a peanut M&M. It fucking didn't. It was nasty. But then we closed the bar down. We go back to her apartment. Now I'm drinking wine. And it was just, I think I drank everything under the sun, and in large quantities. And the next morning, I wake up and I am like in so much pain from this hangover. I'm so sick. It's like one of the worst I've ever had. And it was my dad's birthday, and we were supposed to go to Topgolf. And so I tried to be a trooper, and ultimately I ended up having a seizure because I was so hungover. And I had been seizure free for 2 years at that point. So it definitely rocked my world. And after that, that's when I was like, okay, Josie, for real, like we can't drink. Like you don't have any control over it. You can't do it. And at this point, I was also starting in the life coaching academy. So I felt really confident. I was learning all these things about myself, and I went 8 months. So this started September 2022. So then I went 8 months, and then we had a bachelorette party. And so the boys came, the girls came, and the first night didn't drink. I had zero intention of drinking, but I kind of left it flexible because I knew we were in Scottsdale. So I knew that there would be no way that I could get drugs. So at least I knew that I wasn't gonna do drugs. And in the back of my head, I still had that thought, maybe I can handle it. Well, on the second day is when we were gonna go to dinner and go out to the bars after. And I had been to bars before this and not drank, so that wasn't an issue. But everyone was kind of like having a drink on the patio. And so I pulled Sam into the kitchen and I said, hey, here's where I'm at. I'm thinking that I want to kind of drink with everyone, but I'm going to take it easy. Like, I was very clear about how I'm feeling, and Sam and I had a really good conversation, and he was like, if you feel good about it, then, you can make that choice. And so I made that choice, and sure enough, I come rolling in at about 2:30, 3 in the morning. I shut down the bar. Everyone left at about, I want to say, midnight. And because I was drinking, I was like, no, we can't stop now. And at that point, I had started taking shots and all of that. So I was pretty toasty. Wake up the next morning, and I had another one of those moments of like, dude, like, you can't handle this. Like, why can't you just go and drink and like have one and be good? And so I had another moment of clarity of like, okay, we're still not good with alcohol. But so then I was like, okay, we're not drinking. And then their wedding came, and it was only wine and beer. And I'm not a big wine or beer unless it's like a Pinot Grigio on a patio in the summer. But I was like, okay, since I don't really like wine or beer, maybe I can have one glass of wine just to toast and celebrate and all of that. Well, that was not the case, because I just started pounding glasses of wine, because it was almost like the beast was released. And like the moment I had a taste, it was like, okay, let's just full send. So I full sended and got back from the wedding. I spent the entire night vomiting, and I haven't puked like that at that point in like a year and a half. So it was pretty brutal. And in that moment, it was really tough for me, because the next morning after the wedding, Pretty Lights was playing his like comeback tour. So it was the first show. We hadn't seen him in 5 years, and I was violently hungover. And I spent all day horizontal until like the very last minute when doors opened. And at that moment, it was just kind of like, there's no more purpose for me drinking, because it only leads to me being disappointed or miserable and shameful, all of the things. Because when I was drinking, there were countless mistakes and embarrassing moments that I had, and mistakes that still kind of impact me today. Like, I wasn't necessarily the best girlfriend or the best friend or the best daughter. Like, I wasn't a good person. And I had that moment where I finally fully said, I'm no longer drinking and I need to be sober. And I truly made a vow that day that it was either I made this choice and followed through and became a better version and having a better life, or I can continue what I'm doing, and who knows where it's gonna take me. And if I had another night like the abs night, who knows what that could have looked like, if I would still be here even. And so that day when I made that choice has completely changed my life forever, and only in the best way possible. I, on a deep level, always knew that sobriety was something I needed to partake in. And I remember in high school having sobriety thoughts, but not really, like, thinking I was too dramatic. And I think I look back, and there were so many times where my intuition and like my higher self would whisper that I needed to stop this. But I wasn't listening, and I wasn't willing to listen because I wanted to be cool. I wanted to have fun. I wanted to be social. And when I became sober, that really was one of the tough parts, is finding those feelings, but in a different way. And that's really what sobriety kind of brings out, is you realize your intention for drinking or doing drugs. And a lot of it relates back to what we want to feel. And it's not necessarily physical, but it's emotional. And I had to really transform what fun looked like and felt like for me, what being cool looked like and felt like me, what, that rebellion looks like and feels like for me now. And as I learned more about myself and really dove into kind of that deeper work of figuring out why I operate the way I do, and why, and how I operate with, or in my relationship with drugs and alcohol. So there was a lot of clarity that came on such a deep level. And I want to say the hardest part for me was the social situations, because there's a lot of pressure to drink. I mean, when you see a friend you haven't seen in a while, the first thing you say is, hey, let's go grab a beer. And, we went to breweries all the time and house parties. And so being in that environment and not being the drunk party girl, it was tough at first. But what helped me the most was I was very vocal and kind of unapologetic about it. I would blankly say, oh, I don't drink. And, I'm not drinking tonight, or whatever it was. And I was very clear that it wasn't going to happen. And there were times where people would, kind of press me and try to get me to do it and be like, oh, come on, just one night. But I really knew that it was something that was so important to me that I needed to follow through with it. And the more I made those hard decisions to either tell people I'm not drinking, or just not drinking in general, it got easier and easier the more I practiced it and the more outspoken I was about it. And I was never judgmental. I still am not, of the people who drink and can drink and aren't wired like me. Like, I have no judgment. However, I do want to share that I believe drugs and alcohol, and they have no, what am I trying to say? Basically, what I'm trying to say is the grass is greener on the other side. And when you're able to stop drinking, or become, or have have a conscious relationship with drugs or alcohol, your life only gets better. It truly does, because you're more in control. And for me, instead of being hungover on the sofa dying every weekend, I wake up and I'm able to go to yoga and get my smoothie and run errands and feel just really good about myself. And there's this guarantee that every morning I will wake up feeling good mentally, and emotionally, besides if I get a cold or something. But I know that I am like in control of my life, and it has only helped me see my life and what's possible in more clear ways, because I decided to give it up. And I'm in constant conversation with my, inner addict. And that was another thing that was tough for me to really embody, was knowing that I'm an addict. And because you usually just think, oh, it's people who drink every day and do drugs every day. But that's not necessarily the truth, because, my inner addict, although it wasn't saying do this every day, it still had so much control over me, where my conscious self, the true Josie, had no way of, talking my addict out of it. Like she my inner addict, she is strong, and I'm still working on the other addictions that I have. Nicotine has been a huge part of my life since I was, 17, and I started smoking cigs. So I'm in constant conversation and checking in. And when that inner addict does speak up, I honor that conversation, but I also remind it of where we are now. And I know for a fact that I would not be in this place, happy, feeling fulfilled in my life, if I would have kept on that same path. So really, sobriety has completely changed my life. It is one of the most important things I've ever done for myself. And it's something that I am passionate about, because I see so many people around me and the conversations I have who would really benefit from sobriety or shifting their relationship. I have a lot of conversations about or with those who are sober curious, who aren't necessarily ready to go cold turkey, but they're seeing and witnessing the impact that it's having in their lives. And 99% of the time, the impact isn't good. So I hope you found resonance in this. If you are sober curious, I highly recommend, and this is coming from a genuine place, to give it a shot. And you don't have to be sober forever. I think I will be because of my, inner addict, but it's something to play with and something to see whether or not it still functions in your life in a positive way or adds value. And when you start to ask yourself kind of those questions on whether things are in service or they sabotage your life, you become really clear on the choices that you need to make. So that is kind of the beginning to end. Obviously, this is a journey. It's something that with every party and dinner and experience, I have to make the choice that's in alignment. But I will say it only ever gets easier. And the more you do it, the more proof you have that you can trust yourself. And that was a huge thing as well, as I never really trusted myself, because every time I'd say I didn't want to do drugs, I'd go and do it. So I had zero self-trust. And over the last 2 years, I've really shown myself that I can trust myself and I can make the right decisions and stay in control of my life. So I hope this episode, just gave you some clarity, or if you enjoyed listening along. But to kind of send it off, it's been so incredible for me, and it's something that I will forever be grateful for. And I'm so grateful for that 26-year-old Josie who decided to make a change and take the first step of making her life better. So I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this episode spoke to you, and I can't wait to continue to share so much more. If you're feeling called, please subscribe and leave a review, so together we can reach even more women who deserve to live their best life. And you can follow me on social at The Bitch in My Brain as I share my journey and life in real time. I can't wait to see you bitches next week. Take care.